In the vastness of space, there existed a civilization so powerful that no one dared to oppose them. They were called the Vorthax, an alien empire feared across galaxies for their unmatched strength and ruthless efficiency. For centuries, they swept through star systems like a storm, leaving destruction in their wake. Wherever they went, worlds fell silent, either bowing to their rule or being erased entirely. No species had ever managed to resist them. Their ships were larger than cities, their weapons capable of tearing planets apart, and their shields impenetrable by any known technology. On Earth, however, life continued as usual. Humanity remained blissfully unaware of the danger looming far beyond its solar system. People went about their daily routines, working, dreaming, and exploring the mysteries of science without realizing how fragile their existence truly was. It wasn't until a young astrophysicist named Daniel Harper noticed something unusual that things began to change. Daniel worked at a small observatory located high in the mountains. Air there was thin and nights were long, but he loved it. Every evening, he would sit in front of his computer screens, analyzing data collected from telescopes pointed toward distant stars. One night, while reviewing readings from a newly installed sensor array, he spotted something strange. There were energy signatures coming from deep space patterns that didn't match anything natural. At first, he thought it might be interference or a glitch in the equipment, but after double-checking everything, he realized it was real. Curious and slightly alarmed, Daniel decided to share his findings with someone he trusted. That person was Rachel Monroe, a brilliant engineer who specialized in advanced propulsion systems. She had been working on cutting-edge designs for spacecraft engines, trying to make travel between planets faster and more efficient. When Daniel showed her the data, she immediately recognized its significance. Together, they spent hours discussing what it could mean. Could these signals indicate the presence of an extraterrestrial fleet? Why were they heading toward Earth? Their conversations grew tense as they considered the possibilities. What if this wasn't just some random anomaly? What if it was a sign of impending doom? Determined to find answers, they compiled all their research into a report and submitted it to Earth's governing council. The council was responsible for overseeing global affairs and making decisions about matters affecting humanity as a whole. Normally, such reports would take weeks or even months to process. But when the council saw the evidence, they acted quickly. News of the potential threat spread rapidly among government officials and scientists. Panic started to rise, but so did determination. Humanity had faced challenges before: diseases, wars, natural disasters, and each time, it had found ways to survive. This situation was different, though. The enemy wasn't just another human conflict. It was something far greater, something beyond comprehension. At the same time, Captain Laura Hayes received orders to prepare her ship for what might become humanity's greatest battle. She commanded the SS Vanguard, one of the most advanced warships ever built. Though relatively untested in combat, the vessel carried experimental weapons designed by Rachel and her team. Laura was a seasoned leader, respected by her crew for her calm demeanor under pressure and her ability to think strategically. Her hair was cut short, and her eyes always seemed to carry a hint of determination, as if she were constantly planning for the next challenge. The crew of the SS Vanguard consisted of men and women from various backgrounds, united by their shared mission to protect Earth. Among them was Lieutenant Marcus Doyle, the ship's navigator. He had a knack for calculating trajectories and plotting courses through dangerous regions of space. Then there was Dr. Emily Carter, the ship's medical officer, whose expertise extended beyond treating injuries to include psychological support for the crew. Each member played a vital role, and together they formed a tight-knit family as preparations intensified. Daniel and Rachel worked around the clock to enhance the SS Vanguard's capabilities. They knew time was running out. The energy signatures, detected earlier, had grown stronger, indicating that whatever was approaching was getting closer. Using every resource available, they retrofitted the ship with cutting-edge cloaking technology and a prototype weapon capable of disrupting enemy shields. It was a desperate gamble, but they had no other choice. Meanwhile, ordinary people on Earth began to notice changes. Governments issued statements urging citizens to stay calm and cooperate with emergency measures. Schools conducted drills to prepare children for evacuation scenarios. News outlets broadcast updates constantly, keeping everyone informed about the latest developments. Some people panicked, stocking up on supplies and preparing for the worst. Others tried to remain optimistic, clinging to hope that humanity would prevail. Back aboard the SS Vanguard, tension mounted as the crew awaited further instructions. They knew the odds were against them. The Vortex were said to dominate entire galaxies effortlessly, their power unmatched by any force in the universe. How could a single human warship possibly stand a chance? Despite the fear gnawing at their minds, the crew refused to give up. They believed in their captain, in their ship, and in themselves. Captain Hayes gathered her officers for a final briefing before departure. Standing in the dimly lit conference room, she addressed them with quiet confidence. "We don't know exactly what we're facing," she said, her voice steady. "But I do know this: we won't go down without a fight. We represent not just this ship, not just our planet, but every human being who has ever looked up at the stars and wondered what lies beyond. Let's show them what we're made of." Her words resonated deeply with the crew. As they filed out of the room, each person felt a renewed sense of purpose. Tomorrow, they would leave Earth behind, venturing into the unknown to confront an enemy unlike any they had ever faced. Failure was not an option, not when the fate of humanity hung in the balance. That night, as the SS Vanguard orbited Earth awaiting launch clearance, Daniel stood outside the observatory where it all began. Staring up at the sky, he couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and dread. Somewhere out there among the countless stars lay the answer to humanity's greatest test. Would they rise to meet it? Or would they crumble beneath the weight of their own insignificance? Only time would tell. The Vorthax arrived in the Milky Way galaxy like a shadow spreading across the stars. Their massive armada moved with precision, their ships gliding silently through space as they claimed system after system. Them without resistance. Some surrendered immediately, hoping to spare themselves from destruction. Others fought bravely, but were crushed under the overwhelming might of the Vorthax fleet. The invaders showed no mercy. Wherever they went, chaos followed. Back on Earth, news of the Vorthax's advance reached governments and military leaders. Panic rippled through the population as reports of entire worlds being wiped out spread across the globe. People gathered around televisions and radios, listening intently to updates about the alien threat. Scientists scrambled to analyze every scrap of information they could gather, while politicians debated how best to respond. It was clear that humanity's survival depended on quick thinking and decisive action. Captain Laura Hayes and her crew, aboard the SS Vanguard, prepared for what lay ahead. They had been given their orders: venture into deep space to intercept the Vorthax and gather intelligence. Though the mission was dangerous, it was also necessary. Humanity needed to understand its enemy if it hoped to stand any chance against them. As the SS Vanguard left Earth's orbit, the crew felt the weight of their responsibility. They were not just soldiers, they were explorers, pioneers stepping into the unknown. Each member of the team knew that this journey might be their last, yet despite the fear gnawing at their hearts, they remained focused. This wasn't just about survival, it was about protecting everything they held dear. The ship traveled for days, moving deeper into uncharted territory. Along the way, Lieutenant Marcus Doyle plotted their course carefully, ensuring they avoided areas where the Vorthax presence was strongest. Dr. Emily Carter monitored the health of the crew, making sure everyone stayed physically and mentally prepared for the challenges ahead. Meanwhile, Captain Hayes spent hours reviewing strategies, studying maps of nearby star systems, and planning for every possible scenario. Finally, through the ship's sensors, they detected the faint hum of energy emanating from the alien vessels. These ships were unlike anything humanity had ever seen: massive structures, bristling with weapons and glowing with an eerie light. Just looking at them filled the crew with awe and dread. Using the ship's advanced scanners, Daniel Harper and Rachel Monroe worked together to analyze the Vorthax technology. Closely searching for weaknesses, the Vorthax shields appeared impenetrable, but there were subtle fluctuations in their energy patterns. If they could exploit those fluctuations, they might have a chance to strike back. While the scientists worked, Captain Hayes ordered the crew to maintain stealth sensors, giving them a critical advantage. For now, they observed silently, gathering as much information as possible. One night, the crew rested. The communications officer picked up a transmission between two Vorthax commanders. The message was garbled at first, but after running it through translation software, they managed to decipher parts of it. What they heard sent chills down their spines. The Vorthax spoke casually about their plans for Earth, referring to humanity as primitive and insignificant. They described their intentions to enslave survivors, strip the planet of its resources, and leave it barren once they were done. When Captain Hayes shared the contents of the transmission with her crew, anger flared among them. How dare these invaders think so little of humanity? How dare they believe they could simply take what wasn't theirs? The message only strengthened their resolve. They weren't just fighting for themselves anymore. They were fighting for the future of their species. Rachel Monroe couldn't sleep that night. She sat in the engineering bay, staring at the prototype weapon she and Daniel had developed. It was humanity's best hope, but it still felt woefully inadequate compared to the power of the Vorthax fleet. Her mind raced with questions. Would it work? Could they really make a difference? Or would they end up as another casualty in the Vorthax's endless march across the stars? Daniel joined her after a while, sensing her unease. He placed a hand on her shoulder and offered a small smile. "We've done everything we can," he said softly. "It's up to them now." Rachel nodded, though doubt lingered in her eyes. "I just hope it's enough." The next morning, the SS Vanguard moved closer to the heart of the Vorthax armada. The crew operated in near silence, each person concentrating on their task. Even the ship itself seemed quieter, as if holding its breath. Every decision mattered. Now, one wrong move could expose their position and doom the mission through the viewport. The crew caught glimpses of the Vorthax flagship, a colossal vessel that dwarfed even the largest human ships. It loomed in the distance like a dark cloud, radiating menace. This was their target, the command center of the invasion force. If they could disable it, they might throw the entire fleet into disarray. Captain Hayes called a meeting with her senior officers to finalize their plan. "We'll use the cloaking device to get close," she explained. "Once we're within range, we'll launch a surprise attack using the prototype weapon. Our goal isn't to destroy the entire fleetites, to cripple their command structure and buy Earth time to prepare." The officers exchanged grim looks. They all knew the risks. Attacking the flagship meant going toe-to-toe with some of the people. Most advanced technology in the galaxy, but they also knew it was their only shot. Failure wasn't an option. As the SS Vanguard slipped past the outer perimeter of the Vorthax fleet, the tension aboard the ship became almost unbearable. The beep of the sensors, every flicker of movement on the monitors, made the crew jump. Were they being detected? Had the Vorthax realized they were there? But the cloak held firm. Slowly, steadily, the SS Vanguard closed the distance to the flagship. The crew watched as the enormous alien vessel grew larger in their viewports. Its surface covered in strange symbols and pulsating lights. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a monument to the Vorthax's dominance. In the final moments before the attack, Captain Hayes addressed her crew over the intercom. "This is it," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "We've trained for this. We've prepared for this. Now it's time to show the universe what humanity is capable of. Let's do our planet proud." Her words echoed through the corridors of the ship, lifting spirits and steeling nerves. The crew took their positions, hands steady on controls, eyes fixed on screens. Outside, the vast expanse of space stretched endlessly, dotted with stars and the ominous shapes of alien ships. For a brief moment, there was silence. The battle had begun. The sudden appearance of the SS Vanguard caught the Vorthax completely off guard. One moment, their flagship floated serenely in the void of space, surrounded by its smaller escort ships. The next, a human warship materialized out of thin air, firing its experimental weapon directly at the heart of the alien vessel. The prototype with pulsating beam of energy designed to disrupt shields struck true, causing a visible ripple across the flagship's protective barrier. On board the SS Vanguard, the crew erupted into cheers. For the first time since the mission began, they felt a spark of hope. Their weapon had worked at least partially. While the Vorthax shields hadn't collapsed entirely, they flickered and weakened, exposing a vulnerability that could be exploited. Captain Laura Hayes wasted no time. She barked orders to her gunners, commanding them to focus all firepower on the damaged section of the flagship. But the Vorthax recovered quickly. Alarms blared across their fleet as dozens of smaller ships turned toward the SS Vanguard. The aliens may have been surprised, but they were far from helpless. Within seconds, the human ship found itself surrounded by enemies, each one bristling with weapons far more advanced than anything humanity had ever built. Lieutenant Marcus Doyle gripped the navigation controls tightly, his knuckles white. "We need to move," he shouted over the din of incoming fire. "They're locking onto us." Captain Hayes nodded sharply. "Evasive maneuvers. Keep us mobile." Doyle didn't hesitate. His fingers danced across the console as he plotted a zigzagging course through the chaos. The SS Vanguard darted left and right, spinning and diving to avoid the relentless barrage of energy blasts. Each shot that missed sent shockwaves rippling through the ship, shaking the crew to their core. Despite the danger, the young navigator remained calm, his mind working faster than ever before. In the engineering bay, Rachel Monroe and Daniel Harper scrambled to keep the ship running. The prototype weapon had drained a significant amount of power, leaving other systems strained. Sparks flew from panels as circuits overloaded, and warning lights flashed across every surface. Rachel cursed under her breath as she yanked open an access panel, revealing a tangled mess of wires. "We're losing stability in the rear thrusters," she yelled at Daniel, who was monitoring the ship's energy levels. "If we don't reroute power soon, we won't be able to maneuver." Daniel nodded grimly. He tapped furiously at his console, redirecting energy from non-essential systems. "To the engines? I'm doing what I can," he replied. "But we're pushing the ship past its limits." Back on the bridge, Captain Hayes watched the battle unfold with grim determination. The odds were stacked heavily against them, but she refused to give up. Her eyes scanned the monitors, searching for any advantage they could exploit. Then she noticed something, a gap forming between two groups of Vorthax ships. It was small, but it might be enough. "Doyle," she called out, her voice cutting through the noise. "Can you get us through that opening?" Doyle glanced at the display and frowned. "It's tight," he admitted. "But if we time it right, do it," Hayes ordered. "Full throttle." The navigator took a deep breath and adjusted the controls. The SS Vanguard surged forward, weaving through the narrow gap just as the Vorthax ships closed ranks behind them. For a brief moment, they were clear of enemy fire. But the reprieve was short-lived. More ships peeled away from the main fleet, giving chase. Rachel's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, we've got a problem. The cloaking device is destabilizing. If we try to use it now, it might fry the entire system." Hayes clenched her jaw. Without the cloak, they would be vulnerable. But staying visible meant certain destruction. She made a split-second decision. Keep it offline for now. Focus on keeping the engines and weapons operational. As the chase continued, the crew fought desperately to stay alive. Gunners fired volley after volley at the pursuing ships, scoring hits but failing to take any down completely. The Vorthax vessels absorbed the impacts like insects brushing off raindrops, their shields holding firm despite the damage. Dr. Emily Carter moved among the crew, offering words of encouragement and tending to minor injuries. Though her medical skills weren't being fully utilized yet, she knew that could change at any moment. She stayed close to the injured, ready to act the instant someone needed her help. Meanwhile, Daniel and Rachel worked tirelessly to stabilize the ship. They patched leaks, rerouted power, and even resorted to manual overrides when automated systems failed. Sweat dripped from their foreheads as they pushed themselves to the brink of exhaustion. Every second counted, and neither of them dared to slow down. On the bridge, Captain Hayes formulated a new plan. The prototype weapon had proven effective against the Vorthax shields, but it required precise targeting to maximize its impact. If they could position the SS Vanguard correctly, they might be able to deliver another crippling blow to the flagship. "Doyle," she said, turning to the navigator, "I need you to bring us around for another pass at the flagship. Aim for the same spot we hit earlier." Doyle hesitated. "That area's swarming with enemy ships. We'll never make it without taking heavy fire." "I know," Hayes replied. "Evenly. But if we don't try, we lose everything. Trust me." The navigator swallowed hard but nodded. "Understood, Captain." With renewed purpose, the SS Vanguard swung wide, looping back toward the flagship. Navorus anticipated the maneuver, sending waves of fighters to intercept them. Laser blasts streaked through space, narrowly missing the human ship as it hurtled forward. Inside, the crew held their breath, praying the hull would hold. Just as they reached optimal range, Rachel's voice came over the intercom. "Weapons charged and ready. Fire at will." Hayes didn't hesitate. Fire. The prototype weapon discharged again, unleashing a concentrated burst of energy that struck the weakened section of the flagship's shields. This time, the barrier shattered entirely, leaving the alien vessel exposed. Erupted on the bridge, but Hayes silenced them with a raised hand. "Don't celebrate yet," she warned. "Finish the job." The gunners obeyed, unleashing everything they had at the flagship. Explosions lit up the darkness as shells and beams pounded the massive ship. Its surface cracked and buckled under the assault, secondary explosions rippling outward as internal systems failed. For the first time, the Vorthax seemed to falter. But victory came at a cost. As the SS Vanguard prepared to withdraw, a stray blast struck the ship's port side, tearing through the hull. Alarms screamed as oxygen vented into space, and several crew members were thrown from their stations. Dr. Carter rushed to the injured, her hands moving swiftly to stem the bleeding and stabilize the wounded. Rachel and Daniel scrambled to contain the breach, sealing bulkheads, and rerouting life support. Smoke filled the corridors, stinging their eyes and making it difficult to breathe, yet they pressed on, driven by sheer willpower. Despite the damage, the SS Vanguard managed to escape the immediate threat. As they limped away from the battlefield, the crew allowed themselves a moment of relief. They had done the impossible. They had struck a blow against the seemingly invincible Vorthax. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge, staring at the flagship as it drifted, crippled and silent. A sense of pride swelled within her chest, but it was tempered by the knowledge that the fight was far from over. The Vorthax would regroup, and when they did, humanity would need to be ready. For now, though, they had bought themselves precious time, and sometimes in the vastness of space, time was the most valuable resource of all. The SS Vanguard limped through space, its hull battered and scarred from the battle. Flames licked at the edges of the damaged sections, and smoke filled the corridors despite the crew's frantic efforts to seal breaches. The ship was still operational, but barely. Every system groaned under the strain, and warning lights blinked incessantly across the control panels. Yet amid the chaos, a sense of cautious triumph lingered. They had struck a blow against the Vorthax flagship, a feat no one thought possible. Captain Laura Hayes stood on the bridge, her face streaked with soot, but her expression unwavering. She watched as the crippled alien vessel drifted farther away, its once imposing presence now diminished. Explosions continued to ripple across its surface, sending debris spiraling into the void. It was a sight that would have been unimaginable just hours earlier. Humanity had proven it could stand up to the Vorthax Savan, if only for a moment. But the cost weighed heavily on her mind. Several members of the crew were injured, some critically. Dr. Emily Carter worked tirelessly in the medical bay, tending to burns, fractures, and shrapnel wounds. Her hands moved quickly, stitching wounds and administering painkillers while offering words of reassurance. Despite her calm demeanor, she couldn't ignore the toll this mission was taking on everyone aboard. Even the strongest among them were beginning to show cracks. Lieutenant Marcus Doyle sat hunched over his navigation console, his shoulders slumped. He'd guided the SS Vanguard through impossible odds, weaving between enemy ships and dodging fire with precision. But now, exhaustion etched deep lines into his face. His uniform was torn, and a bandage covered a gash on his forehead where a loose panel had struck him during the attack. Still, he forced himself to stay alert, plotting a course back toward friendly territory. In the engineering bay, Rachel Monroe and Daniel Harper labored to keep the ship running. The prototype weapon had drained nearly all of their power reserves, leaving critical systems on the brink of failure. Sparks flew as they worked frantically to repair damaged circuits and reroute energy. Their movements were mechanical, driven by adrenaline and sheer determination. Neither spoke much. There was no time for conversation when every second counted. As the SS Vanguard moved farther from the battlefield, Captain Hayes turned her attention to assessing the situation. "Status report," she ordered. Her voice steady, despite the fatigue evident in her eyes. One of the officers responded immediately. "Shields are down to 10%. Engines are holding, but we're running on backup systems. Life support is stable for now." Hayes nodded grimly. "In casualties?" The officer hesitated before answering. 12 injured, 3 severely, no fatalities. Yet the word hung in the air like a storm cloud. Hayes clenched her fists briefly, then released them. "We'll get everyone home," she said firmly. "That's a promise." Her words carried weight, but they also masked the uncertainty gnawing at her insides. The Vorthax fleet hadn't been destroyed, had merely retreated temporarily. Once the aliens regrouped, they would come after the SS Vanguard with even greater fury. Time was running out. Back in the medical bay, Dr. Carter tended to a young engineer named Alex, who had suffered severe burns on his arms while trying to contain a fire in the engine room. She applied ointment carefully, her touch gentle but efficient. "You're going to be okay," she told him, though her voice betrayed hints of doubt. "Just focus on breathing." Alex managed a weak smile. "Thanks, Doc. Guess I should have." "Stayed away from the flames, huh?" Carter chuckled softly, though her heart ached. These were good people, brave, selfless individuals willing to risk everything for humanity's survival. And yet, here they were, battered and broken, clinging to hope in the vast emptiness of space. Meanwhile, Rachel and Daniel made a startling discovery. While inspecting the ship's logs, they noticed something unusual about the Vorthax fleet's movements before the battle. The alien ships had been converging on specific coordinates, not just around Earth, but across multiple star systems. It was as if they were searching for something. Rachel frowned, pointing to the data on her screen. "Look at this pattern. They're not just attacking randomly. There's a method to their madness." Daniel leaned closer, studying the information. "You think they're looking for something? Some kind of resource or technology?" "It's possible," Rachel replied. "Or maybe a location. Something important enough to justify such a massive invasion. If the Vorthax were hunting for something, it changed everything." Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were caught in the middle of a larger conflict, one they didn't fully understand. The implications sent a chill down Rachel's spine. What if defeating the Vorthax wasn't enough? What if stopping them meant uncovering whatever secret they were pursuing? On the bridge, Captain Hayes mulled over the same question. If the Vorthax had a goal beyond conquest, it could explain their relentless drive to dominate galaxies. But without more information, any theory was pure speculation. For now, their priority remained getting the SS Vanguard back to Earth, safely and preparing for the inevitable counterattack. As the ship continued its journey, tensions ran high. The crew worked tirelessly to repair the damage, knowing that another encounter with the Vorthax could happen at any moment. Conversations were brief and focused, punctuated by moments of silence as each person wrestled with their own fears and doubts. Lieutenant Doyle found himself staring out of the viewport, watching the stars blur past as the ship traveled at high speed. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. The Vorthax were cunning, patient hunters. Would they let the SS Vanguard escape so easily? Or were they simply biding their time, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike? His thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice behind him. "You should rest," Dr. Carter said gently. "You've done more than anyone could ask of you today." Doyle shook his head. "Can't. Not until we're safe." Carter placed a hand on his shoulder. Pushing yourself too hard won't help anyone. We need you sharp, Marcus. Trust me. Reluctantly, Doyle nodded. Maybe later, he muttered, turning back to his console. Hours passed, and the SS Vanguard drew closer to Earth. The crew began to relax slightly, allowing themselves to believe they might actually make it home. But just as hope started to take root, an alarm blared throughout the ship. "Captain," one of the officers shouted. "Multiple contacts detected. Closing fast." Hayes rushed to the monitor, her heart pounding. Sure enough, a swarm of Vorthax. Fighters appeared on the screen, racing toward them like angry hornets. The aliens hadn't given up after all. "Battle stations," Hayes commanded. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers." The crew sprang into action, adrenaline surging once again. Lieutenant Doyle took the helm, guiding the ship through a series of sharp turns to evade the incoming fire. Explosions rocked the SS Vanguard as blasts struck its already weakened hull. Smoke poured into the corridors, and sparks flew from overloaded systems. Rachel and Daniel scrambled to stabilize the ship's power grid, which threatened to collapse under the strain. "We can't take much more of this," Daniel yelled over the noise. "We don't have a choice," Rachel shot back, her hands flying across the console. "Just hold on." On the bridge, Hayes made a split-second decision. Activate the cloaking device. Now, but it's unstable. Someone protested. "I don't care. Do it." The cloak flickered to life, enveloping the SS Vanguard in invisibility, just as the Vorthax fighters closed in. For a tense moment, it seemed like the ruse might fail. The cloak sputtered and sparked, but miraculously it held. The alien ships passed by, confused, unable to locate their target. As the danger faded, the crew exhaled collectively. They had survived again, but the victory felt hollow. The Vorthax were relentless, and the SS Vanguard couldn't endure many more encounters like this. Captain Hayes stared out at the stars, her jaw set firmly. They had bought humanity time, but the war was far from over. The real fight was only beginning. The SS Vanguard finally reached Earth's orbit, battered and scarred but still intact. As the ship approached, the crew felt a mixture of relief and dread. They had survived unimaginable odds, but their victory against the Vorthax flagship was only a small step in a much larger battle. The alien fleet remained a looming threat. Humanity's future hung precariously in the balance. Captain Laura Hayes stepped onto the bridge after ensuring her injured crew members were settled safely. In the medical bay, her face was pale with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with resolve. She looked out at the blue and white sphere of Earth below, its beauty undiminished despite the shadows gathering around it. "We've done what we could," she said softly. To herself, now it's up to them. News of the SS Vanguard's success spread quickly across the planet. Governments convened emergency meetings. Scientists worked around the clock analyzing data collected during the mission. And ordinary people gathered in streets and living rooms, watching broadcasts about the events unfolding in space. For the first time in history, humanity faced a common enemy, not another nation or ideology, but an extraterrestrial force bent on domination. Fear gripped many, but so did determination. People rallied together, donating resources, volunteering for defense efforts, preparing for whatever lay ahead. At a secure facility near Washington, D.C., Daniel Harper and Rachel Monroe presented their findings to Earth's Governing Council. Using holographic projections, they explained how the prototype weapon had disrupted the Vorthax shields and detailed the vulnerabilities they had identified. The room fell silent as images of the crippled alien flagship appeared before them. It was undeniable proof that humanity could fight back, but also a stark reminder of the scale of the threat. One council member leaned forward, his expression grim. "What are our chances if they return? Can we replicate this technology on a larger scale?" Rachel hesitated before answering. "It's possible, but it won't be easy. The weapon requires enormous amounts of energy, more than most ships can generate. We'd need to retrofit entire fleets, and even then, we're talking about months, maybe years of development." Daniel chimed in, his voice steady. "But there's something else. While reviewing the Vorthax movements, we notice patterns suggesting they're searching for something. Whatever it is, it's important enough to justify their invasion. If we can figure out what they're looking for, we might gain leverage. The council exchanged uneasy glances. Humanity's survival depended not just on brute strength, but on understanding the enemy's motives. Orders were issued immediately. Increase research funding, mobilize global defenses, and prioritize uncovering the mystery behind the Vorthax's objectives. Back aboard the SS Vanguard, repairs were underway. Engineers swarmed over the damaged hull, welding cracks and replacing shattered panels. Inside the ship, technicians worked tirelessly to restore critical systems. Despite the urgency, morale among the crew remained high. They had accomplished the impossible once. They believed they could do it again. Lieutenant Marcus Doyle spent hours poring over star charts, studying potential routes the Vorthax might take when they launched their next assault. His mind raced with possibilities, each scenario more dire than the last. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. "We should be doing more," he muttered to himself late one night in the navigation bay. "Just waiting here feels wrong." Dr. Emily Carter found him slumped over his console, staring blankly at the glowing displays. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've done everything you can, Marcus. Rest isn't weakness, it's preparation." Doyle sighed heavily. "I know, but every second we waste feels like we're giving them an advantage." "We'll have our chance," Carter assured him. "And when we do, we'll need you sharp, trust me." Despite her words, Doyle struggled to sleep that night. Images of burning planets and screaming civilians haunted his dreams. When dawn broke, he returned to his station, determined to push through his fatigue. Meanwhile, Captain Hayes met with military leaders to discuss strategies for defending Earth. Satellite networks were repositioned to monitor deep space. Warning systems were upgraded, and evacuation plans were drawn up for major cities. Every decision carried weight, knowing lives depended on getting it right. Yet amidst the chaos, Hayes remained calm, her leadership inspiring confidence in those around her as preparations continued. Word came from observatories monitoring the Vorthax fleet. The aliens hadn't retreated entirely. Instead, they seemed to be regrouping near the edge of the solar system. Their massive armada loomed ominously, a dark cloud on the horizon. Intelligence suggested they were rebuilding their flagship and fortifying their forces. It was only a matter of time before they struck again. The news sent shockwaves through Earth's population. Panic flared in some areas while others doubled down on defensive measures. Factories churned out weapons and supplies, schools taught children emergency protocols, and families prepared underground shelters. Humanity braced itself for war. In response, Earth's newly formed Galactic Defense Initiative, GDI, took shape. Modeled after Captain Hayes' leadership style, the GDI aimed to unite all nations under a single command structure. Training programs were established to prepare soldiers for interstellar combat, and recruitment drives brought in volunteers eager to defend their home. Among them were young men and women inspired by the bravery of the SS Vanguard crew. Rachel and Daniel threw themselves into improving the prototype weapon. Working alongside teams of engineers and physicists, they refined its design, making it smaller, faster, and more efficient. Progress was slow, but steady. Each breakthrough brought renewed hope, though none dared to celebrate prematurely. The stakes were too high. Days turned into weeks, and tension mounted. The Vorthax fleet remained ominously quiet, their intentions unclear. Some speculated they were waiting for reinforcements. Others feared they were planning something far worse. Whatever the case, Earth's defenders knew they couldn't afford to let their guard down. One evening, Captain Hayes stood alone on the observation deck of the SS Vanguard, gazing out at the stars. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. She thought about her crew, the sacrifices they had made, the risks they had taken. They had proven that humanity could stand toe-to-toe with the Vorthax, but at what cost? How many battles would it take to secure peace? How long could Earth hold out? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Turning, she saw Dr. Carter enter, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. thought you could use this? The doctor said with a faint smile, handing one to Hayes. Thanks, Hayes replied, taking the cup gratefully. I didn't realize I was being predictable, Carter chuckled. You're not. But sometimes even captains need reminders to take care of themselves. They stood side by side in silence for a moment, sipping their drinks as they watched. The endless expanse of space stretched before them. Finally, Hayes spoke. Do you think we can win this, Emily? Carter considered the question carefully. I don't know, she admitted. But I do know this. Humanity has faced impossible odds before. We adapt, we endure, and we find ways to overcome. That's who we are. Hayes nodded slowly, a flicker of determination returning to her eyes. Then that's what we'll keep doing. As the days passed, Earth grew stronger. Ships were retrofitted with new technologies, soldiers trained harder, and communities banded together in solidarity. The Vorthax may have dominated galaxies effortlessly, but humanity refused to bow without a fight, slowly but surely. The stage was set for the ultimate showdown, a clash between two vastly different civilizations, each fighting for its survival. And somewhere in the vastness of space, the Vorthax watched and waited, unaware that their greatest challenge yet was only beginning. The Vorthax fleet finally made its move. Observatories monitoring deep space detected a surge in activity near the edge of the solar system. Ships began to mobilize, forming tight formations as they advanced toward Earth. Intelligence reports confirmed what everyone feared. The aliens were preparing for a full-scale invasion. The moment humanity had been dreading was here. Captain Laura Hayes stood on the bridge of the SS Vanguard, her hands clasped tightly behind her back. Her ship had been repaired and upgraded, but it still bore the scars of its previous encounter with the Vorthax. Around her, the crew worked with quiet efficiency, running final checks on weapons systems, shields, and engines. Tension filled the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. This was at the battle that would decide the fate of Earth. Captain, Lieutenant Marcus Doyle called out from his station. They're entering the inner solar system. Estimated time to engagement, 30 minutes. Hayes nodded grimly. Sound general quarters. Alert all ships in the fleet. The intercom crackled to life as orders echoed through the corridors of the SS Vanguard. Crew members scrambled to their posts, strapping into seats and gripping controls. Outside, Earth's hastily assembled defense fleet spread out in orbit, forming a protective barrier around the planet. Dozens of human warships bristled with weapons, their crews ready to fight to the death if necessary. Rachel Monroe and Daniel Harper sat side by side in the engineering bay, their eyes glued to monitors displaying real-time data from the prototype weapon. It had been installed on several ships now, though none carried it as effectively as the SS Vanguard. Rachel tapped nervously at her console, adjusting power levels and checking redundancies. We've done everything we can, she murmured. Now, it's up to them. Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. They'll do fine. They have to. As the Vorthax armada approached, the enormity of the situation became clear. Their ships stretched across the sky like a metallic storm cloud, blotting out the stars. The flagship, though damaged, led the charge, its massive form dwarfing even the largest human vessels. Energy pulses rippled along its surface, signaling the activation of its weapon systems. On Earth, millions watched live broadcasts of the unfolding battle. Families huddled together in shelters, praying for survival. Soldiers stood guard at defensive positions, rifles in hand. Leaders addressed their people, urging calm and unity. Humanity held its breath, waiting to see whether its defiance would pay off or end in annihilation. The first shots rang out as the two fleets clashed. Human ships fired salvos of missiles and energy beams, targeting the weakest points identified. During the earlier mission, Vorthax responded with devastating barrages of plasma fire, tearing through human defenses. Explosions lit up the darkness of space, sending debris spiraling outward. The battle was chaotic, brutal, and unrelenting. The SS Vanguard darted through the chaos, its cloaking device flickering intermittently as it maneuvered into position. Captain Hayes barked orders over the din of alarms and explosions. The flagship. Focus all firepower. Lieutenant Doyle guided the ship with precision, weaving between enemy vessels while avoiding return fire. Weapons locked, he announced. Ready to fire? Fire? Hayes commanded. The prototype. Weapon discharged once again, unleashing a concentrated burst of energy that struck the Vorthax flagship. Its shields flared brightly before collapsing entirely, leaving the alien vessel exposed. Cheers erupted aboard the SS Vanguard, but there was no time to celebrate. Other ships joined the assault, hammering the flagship with everything they had. Inside the alien vessel, confusion reigned. For the first time in centuries, the Vorthax faced an opponent capable of matching their strength. Their commanders struggled to adapt, issuing frantic orders to regroup and counterattack. But the damage had already been done. Secondary explosions rocked the flagship, crippling its engines and internal systems. Slowly, the massive ship began to drift. Powerless and adrift, seeing their flagship fall sent shockwaves through the Vorthax fleet. Morale plummeted as doubt crept into their ranks. Without their central command structure, coordination faltered. Ships broke formation, retreating in disarray. Within minutes, the tide of the battle shifted dramatically, but victory came at a cost. Many human ships lay destroyed or heavily damaged, their crews lost among the wreckage. The SS Vanguard itself was barely holding together, its hull scorched in leaking atmosphere. Fires raged in the lower decks, and emergency teams fought to contain them. Despite the losses, the surviving crew pressed on, knowing they had achieved something extraordinary. As the last of the Vorthax ships disappeared into the void, silence fell over the battlefield. Exhaustion settled in like a heavy blanket, weighing down every survivor. On the bridge of the SS Vanguard, Captain Hayes slumped into her chair, her face streaked with soot and tears. She stared at the drifting remains of the alien flagship, her mind racing with thoughts of what might come next. Dr. Emily Carter tended to the wounded, her movements mechanical, yet compassionate. She comforted dying soldiers, holding their hands as they took their final breaths. In quieter moments, she allowed herself to grieve, shedding tears for those who wouldn't make it home. Yet even in sorrow, she found solace in the knowledge that their sacrifice had saved countless others. Rachel and Daniel embraced in the engineering bay, their bodies trembling with relief and exhaustion. They had pushed themselves to their limits and beyond, driven by the hope that their work could make a difference. Now, staring at the battered but victorious ship around them, they felt a sense of pride and profound gratitude. News of the victory spread rapidly across Earth. Celebrations erupted in cities worldwide, with people spilling into streets to cheer and embrace. Fireworks lit up the night sky, and songs of triumph filled the air. For the first time in weeks, fear gave way to joy. Humanity had faced an unstoppable force and emerged victorious. Yet amid the jubilation, leaders reminded their people that the war wasn't over. The Vorthax might return, stronger and more determined than ever. Preparations continued, with new technologies developed and defenses strengthened. Earth vowed never to be caught unprepared again. In the days that followed, Captain Hayes assumed a leadership role within the Galactic Defense Initiative. Drawing on her experience, she trained new officers and strategized for future conflicts. Her calm demeanor and unwavering resolve inspired confidence in those around her, earning her respect far beyond her rank. Daniel and Rachel returned to their research, pushing the boundaries of science to ensure humanity remained prepared. Their work became the foundation for advancements in space travel, weaponry, and communication. Together, they dreamed of a future where humanity could explore the stars not as victims, but as equals. The defeat of the Vorthax sent shockwaves. Throughout the galaxy, oppressed species rose up against their conquerors, emboldened by Earth's example. Messages of gratitude poured in from distant worlds, thanking humanity for standing against tyranny. Earth found itself thrust onto the interstellar stage, viewed as both a beacon of hope and a potential ally. For the crew of the SS Vanguard, Life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as possible, after such a monumental event. Member carried the scars of battle, both physical and emotional. But they also carried memories of camaraderie, courage, and triumph. They had faced the unknown and prevailed, proving that humanity's spirit was indomitable. As the SS Vanguard set course for unexplored regions of space, its crew looked to the horizon with a mixture of pride and caution. The galaxy was vast, and full of wonders, but also dangers. What lay ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity would meet it head-on, ready to carve its place among the stars. And so, under the watchful gaze of the cosmos, Earth entered a new era, defined not by fear, but by resilience. The battle against the Vorthax had tested humanity's limits, revealing strengths many didn't know they possessed. Though challenges undoubtedly awaited, the people of Earth faced the future with hope, determination, and an unshakable belief in their ability to overcome whatever came next.